Have you ever felt a pain that seems to have no explanation? That sharp stab in your back that comes right after a family argument, or the exhaustion that shows up out of nowhere as if your body is tired of dealing with everything your mind refuses to face. It's curious how pain doesn't just talk about muscles or joints. Sometimes it seems like the language life uses to say, "Stop, something's not right." But of course, it's easier to blame the mattress or the weather, right? Today, I want to invite you to look at your pain from a different perspective, not as enemies to be defeated, but as messages that have something important to tell you. Together, we'll explore how the Stoics understood suffering and what we can learn from each discomfort, whether physical or emotional. Stay with me until the end, because the last lesson might completely change the way you interpret those uncomfortable moments you've been trying so hard to ignore. Let's begin. Number 1. When the body speaks, listen to what it's really trying to tell you. It's easy to ignore the messages our bodies send us, isn't it? A back pain gets blamed on the mattress, a stomach ache on that heavy dinner, and so we continue, disconnected from the possibility that our body isn't just failing, it's trying to tell us something. But what if that pain wasn't a mechanical complaint, but a cry for help, a physical reflection of something much deeper? Because the body, even though we treat it like a machine that should keep running without protest, is much wiser than we're willing to admit. The Stoics were clear that the body is a messenger, not the problem itself. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reflected on how every experience of the body is an opportunity for the mind to learn. Pain isn't something to fear or ignore. It's an invitation to observe what's happening inside of you. And no, I'm not just talking about your muscles or joints. I'm talking about your emotional life, those worries you carry silently, the resentments you haven't let go of, and the fears you preferred to keep hidden in a dark corner, hoping they would disappear on their own. Think about the last time that pain showed up, in the exact spot where it always does. Maybe it's your neck, stiff as if it's carrying the weight of all the responsibilities you haven't dared to release. Or maybe it's a persistent headache, as if your mind is struggling to break free from thoughts that go in circles without finding an exit. The body has its own language, and each discomfort is a word in that language. The question is, are you willing to translate it? Psychology has also explored this body-mind connection. Carl Jung spoke about how unresolved inner conflicts find their way into physical expression. The body becomes the stage where unprocessed emotions seek to be seen because, as you know well, what you don't confront head-on will eventually find you through another route. But instead of listening, we prefer to silence it with a pill, with a quick painkiller that drowns out the noise, even if only for a while. This doesn't mean every pain is a profound metaphor or a cosmic message. Sometimes a backache is just a backache. But even in those cases, doesn't it seem curious that the body becomes more vulnerable when you're tired, stressed, or emotionally overloaded? The connection is there, even if we try to deny it. Listening to the body isn't about surrendering to suffering. It's about paying attention to the signals, so you can take care of yourself before those signals turn into something more serious. So, what is your body trying to tell you today? Maybe it's time to stop, to look inward, to ask yourself what you need to release or what you should pay attention to. It's not about blaming yourself for what you're feeling, but about recognizing that the body, though fragile, is also your greatest ally. Because while you get lost in future worries or past regrets, it's still here, holding you up, reminding you that the only place you can truly live is the present. Listening isn't always comfortable. It might mean admitting that you're more tired than you thought, that you need to ask for help, or that it's time to make a change you've been putting off. But in that act of paying attention, of giving your body the respect it deserves, you find an opportunity to reconcile with yourself. Because when the body speaks, It's not trying to stop you. It's inviting you to live with more awareness, more care, and above all, more compassion for yourself. Number 2, the weight of the soul also hurts. Release what you can't control. Isn't it curious how we cling to things we can't change, as if by simply wishing hard enough we could make the world work according to our rules? Maybe you've spent entire nights going over in your mind what you should have said during that argument, or worrying about what your children are doing with their lives as if that would change anything. But there you are, with a tight chest, a stomach in knots, and a feeling of exhaustion you can't explain. The weight of what we cannot control doesn't just settle in the soul, it also finds a home in the body as a constant reminder of our own limitations. I met Elena a few years ago in a reading group, an elegant woman about 70 years old, with that mix of wisdom and weariness that life tends to leave in those who have faced too many battles. Elena always seemed calm, but one day, during a break, she confessed to me that she was exhausted. "Gabriel, I can't do this anymore. My children don't call anymore. I don't know if I did something wrong or if they're just busy. I spend my days waiting for a call, a message, anything to tell me I still matter, but it doesn't come. And here I am, trying not to think about it, but it hurts to even breathe." What she said hit me, not because it was an unusual situation, but because it's so common that we often don't even realize how much it affects us. I asked her what she was doing to try to feel better. I think a lot. What can I do to make them love me again? How can I fix this? But the more I think, the farther I feel from them, and the more it hurts. It's like carrying a huge stone, but I don't know how to let it go. Elena was trapped in one of life's most difficult traps, believing that with enough effort, we can control the decisions, emotions, and attitudes of others. But the truth is, we can't. And there's nothing more draining than trying to fight against that reality. I spoke to her about Stoicism and how Epictetus taught us that there are things within our control and things that are not, and that the key to inner peace is accepting that difference. You can't control whether they call or not, but you can choose what you do with that time you spend waiting. What would you do if you stopped waiting? Eleanor began to cry, but not out of sadness, out of relief. In the weeks that followed, she told me that she had decided to return to something she had always been passionate about: gardening. At first, it was hard to concentrate, but little by little, the plants started to fill that space in my mind where my worries used to be. And the strangest thing happened. By freeing myself from that constant expectation, my children began to call from time to time, as if they had sensed that I no longer needed them to be okay. This story is a reminder that suffering doesn't always come from what happens to us, but from how we try to resist it. We hold on to control as if it were a lifeline, but often it's that very lifeline that drags us down even further. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means accepting that not everything depends on us, and that, though it may sound ironic, gives us a tremendous amount of freedom. And you? What stone have you been carrying that doesn't belong to you? Maybe it's someone close to you, or a situation that didn't go the way you expected. I invite you to stop for a moment and ask yourself, is this really under my control? If the answer is no, then release it. Not because it's easy, but because your well-being deserves it. Remember, you can't change what others do, but you can always choose how to live with it. And in that choice lies true peace. Number 3, what if your pain is an invitation to stop? He who does not have time for rest, sooner or later must find time for illness. This quote, attributed to the Dr. Edward Stanley, resonates deeply in a world that has trained us to keep moving forward, no matter the cost. Even in old age, when we might allow ourselves to slow down, we often remain trapped in the inertia of doing, as if stopping meant failure. But what if that persistent pain in your body or that sense of emotional exhaustion were life's way of telling you that it's time to stop, to look inward, and to reconnect with yourself? Imagine that your body is like a car that has traveled thousands of miles. It has done its job, endured storms and long journeys, but now the dashboard lights are flashing. What do you do? Do you keep driving until the engine stops, or do you choose to pull over and listen to what it needs? This is the exercise I want to offer you today. The next time you feel physical or emotional pain, instead of ignoring it or trying to silence it, stop for a moment. Sit in a quiet place, close your eyes, and ask yourself, what do I need right now? What part of me have I been neglecting? At first, it may be hard to hear that answer, but over time, you'll learn to recognize the signals your body and mind are giving you. Now, let me ask you an important question. How many times have you truly stopped to listen to what your body or emotions need? If you're here, listening to these words, it's because you care about your well-being and want to live with more awareness and serenity. So, if this content resonates with you, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Also, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. It's a pleasure to know we're connected, no matter the distance, sharing these reflections that could change the way we live. Remember, stopping isn't an act of weakness, it's an act of courage. It's the moment when you choose to prioritize your well-being over external demands and give yourself permission to heal, rest, and regain your strength. Because when you allow yourself to stop, you're not wasting time, you're investing in your future. And in that pause, far from the noise, is where you'll find the answers you've been searching for. Number 4, what you resist persists, the Stoic lesson on suffering. We spend our lives running from suffering as if it were a shadow we could leave behind. If I ignore it, it will surely disappear, we think, like someone closing a door and pretending that what's on the other side doesn't exist. But suffering, as Carl Jung rightly said, doesn't disappear when you ignore it. It simply finds another way to manifest itself. Perhaps it's that anxiety you can't explain, that fatigue that doesn't go away no matter how much you sleep, or that sense of emptiness that seems to grow bigger with each passing day. You resist, you fight, you deny, and in the end, the suffering becomes stronger, more present, more difficult to avoid. The Stoics understood something we find hard to accept. Pain is part of life, and the more we resist it, the more power we give it over us. Epictetus said, "It's not things that trouble us, but our opinions about them." And here's the key. It's not the pain that consumes you, it's that constant struggle to avoid feeling it, to escape from it, to pretend it doesn't exist. But what would happen if, instead of resisting, you decided to face the suffering? Not with resignation, but with the courage to look it in the eye and accept its existence as part of your experience. I want to propose something to you. The next time you feel that physical or emotional discomfort you always try to avoid, stop. Instead of trying to distract yourself or silence it, take a few minutes to be with it. Sit in a comfortable place, close your eyes, and breathe deeply. Imagine that suffering is an unwelcome guest that has arrived at your door. Ask it, "What do you want from me? What are you here to teach me?" You may not get an immediate answer, but what you're doing is changing your relationship with that pain. Instead of seeing it as an enemy, you're treating it as a teacher. At first, this exercise may feel strange or even uncomfortable. After all, we've been trained to run from anything that resembles suffering. But little by little, you'll realize something important. When you stop resisting the pain, it loses some of its power. It doesn't disappear magically, but it stops taking up so much space in your mind and body. By accepting it, you integrate it, and by integrating it, you begin to heal. Life is full of things we can't control: losses, disappointments, failures, but what we can choose is how we relate to those experiences. You can keep fighting against them, feeding your own suffering, or you can learn to coexist with what you can't change. Because when you stop resisting, when you accept that pain is also part of the journey, you find something beyond suffering. You find peace. Number 5, when the emptiness shows you what you need. If there's something more frightening than physical pain, it's the emptiness of loneliness. That feeling of being surrounded by silence, as if the world has decided to move on while you're stuck in an endless pause. But curiously, some of humanity's greatest achievements were born precisely in solitude. Did you know that Victor Hugo, the author of Les Miserables, wrote his masterpiece during a self-imposed exile in Guernsey? Forced to leave France due to his political ideals, he spent years away from his homeland, yet it was in that isolation where he found the clarity and strength to create one of the most humane and profound stories in literature. The irony? It was his solitude that connected him most authentically to the pain and hope of others. Hugo's story reminds us of something we often forget. Solitude is not always a punishment. Sometimes it's a space to discover what you truly need. But of course, we live in a society that has taught us to fear it, as if being alone is a sign of failure. Don't you have anyone to go out with? Poor thing, he must be so sad. But what if solitude were an opportunity? What if instead of seeing it as an enemy, you decided to treat it as an ally that can help you understand yourself better? The lesson that Hugo and so many others who have found greatness in isolation teaches us is that time alone is not time wasted. It's a space where you can hear your own voice without the constant noise of others' expectations, and you don't need to write a masterpiece to make use of it. Perhaps that silence is the perfect moment to reconsider what relationships are worth keeping, what dreams you've left behind, or what you need to let go of to feel lighter. Imagine your loneliness is an empty room. You can fill it with complaints, painful memories, and fears of the future. Or you can use it as a blank canvas, a place where each day you paint something new, a small routine that makes you happy, a habit that nurtures your body or mind, or simply the tranquility of being with yourself without needing to justify anything to anyone. Solitude, though uncomfortable at first, has the power to reveal who you truly are at your core. It can be that silent teacher showing you that you don't need constant validation from others to feel complete. Because in the end, what truly hurts about solitude isn't the lack of company, but the fear of facing yourself. But when you overcome that fear, when you choose to look inward and embrace what you find, something changes. You discover that, far from being an emptiness, solitude can be a bridge to a deeper connection with yourself and with life. Number 6, find the why behind every discomfort. Imagine a sculptor in front of a block of marble. At first glance, it's nothing more than a solid, rough, and unattractive mass. But the sculptor doesn't see it that way. In his mind, a masterpiece already exists. Every chisel strike, every fragment that falls to the ground isn't a mistake or a loss, but a necessary step to free the figure trapped inside. The marble, on the other hand, has no idea what's happening. Each impact seems unnecessary, even cruel. If it could speak, it would probably ask, "Why are you doing this to me? Why this pain?" But the sculptor, patient and silent, would continue working, because he knows that without those strikes, the beauty inside could never emerge. Sometimes we are that block of marble. Life hits us with losses, disappointments, and pains that seem meaningless, and we, just like the marble, ask why. Why did I have to face that breakup? Why does it hurt so much that my children are distant? Why is my body no longer responding as it once did? But unlike the sculptor, We don't always see the purpose behind those moments. We only feel the impact and focus on what we're losing without realizing what we're gaining. The philosopher Viktor Frankl, who survived the horrors of concentration camps, left us an essential teaching. Those who have a why can endure almost any how. Pain, though unwanted, can be a chisel that shapes us, that forces us to look beyond the immediate and find a greater purpose. Perhaps that purpose is learning to let go, becoming more compassionate with ourselves, or learning to appreciate what we once took for granted. Or maybe it's discovering an inner strength we would have never known without those difficulties. Think about the pain you carry with you right now, the one that seems to have no explanation. It may be physical, emotional, or both. What if, instead of resisting it, you decided to ask what message it has for you? The answer may not come immediately, and that's okay. The marble doesn't understand the chisel with the first blow either. But in patience, in the willingness to seek meaning rather than rejection, you begin to discover something deeper. Pain, though harsh, doesn't have to be the end of your story. It can be the beginning of a transformation, of a masterpiece still in the making. Because in the end, the marble doesn't sit thinking about what it lost. It becomes something it never imagined it could be. And you, in this moment, are in the hands of the sculptor. Number 7. Gratitude as a remedy. Imagine walking down a cobblestone path in the middle of a storm. The stones slip beneath your feet, the rain pelts your face, and the wind seems determined to push you backward. Every step is a monumental effort, and all you can think is, why do I have to go through this? You press on, focused on the exhaustion, the discomfort, the longing for it all to end. But then, like an unexpected beam of sunlight through the clouds, the path leads you to a hill where you can see a breathtaking landscape, mountains, rivers, an open sky that seems to stretch out to infinity. And in that moment, everything makes sense. The storm doesn't go away, but something in you changes. Suddenly, the difficult journey seems necessary to get there. Pain, much like that storm, rarely feels fair or necessary while we're in the middle of it. We focus on what's missing, on what we wish we could change, on how different our lives would be if we could simply avoid the suffering. But gratitude, although it seems like a simple concept, has the power to transform our perception. It's not about denying the pain or pretending it doesn't exist, but about finding the flashes of light that are always present, even in the darkest moments. I know it might sound absurd to be thankful for something that hurts. How can you be grateful for the loss of a loved one, abandonment, or physical decline? It's not easy, nor should it be. But gratitude doesn't always go directly to the pain itself. It's about what the pain teaches you, about what it awakens in you. It's the conversation you never would have had if it weren't for a tough moment, the strength you discovered within yourself by facing it, the new perspective that helped you appreciate things you once took for granted. Science also backs this transformative power. Studies have shown that practicing gratitude, even in the most challenging times, can reduce anxiety, improve physical health, and boost our emotional resilience. And you don't need grand gestures to begin. It can be as simple as sitting at the end of the day and asking yourself, what did I learn today that made me stronger? What small moment was a gift, even if I didn't notice it at the time? At first, it may be hard to find answers, but over time, like tuning an instrument, you'll realize that there are reasons to be grateful even amid the chaos. Pain is not something we choose, but how we face it is. And gratitude, no matter how small, is an act of resistance, a way of reminding yourself that, despite everything, you are still here. There is still beauty, there is still learning, there is still life. because gratitude doesn't erase the storms, but it teaches you to see beyond them. Every step you take on this path, every small act of gratitude you practice, brings you closer to that hill from which you can look back and understand that, in some way, it all had a purpose. Are you ready to begin now? Reaching this point is no small achievement. If you're reading these words, it's because something within you has decided that no matter how difficult or painful the journey has been, there is still a reason to keep learning, growing, and transforming. Reflecting on pain isn't easy. Facing it, accepting it, and finding lessons within it to guide us toward a fuller life requires courage. That's why I want to thank you for gifting yourself this time and allowing yourself to explore these ideas that, although uncomfortable, have the power to change the way you face each day. I'd like to invite you to share in the comments the phrase, "My pain is my teacher," and also let me know from which country you're listening. It's wonderful to know that even though we are physically far apart, these reflections connect us in a shared purpose, to live with more meaning, more calm, and above all, more gratitude for the simple fact of being here. If you feel this message could help someone else, don't hesitate to share it. Sometimes, a video like this can be the push someone needs to start seeing their own life with new eyes. And of course, if you want to keep exploring topics like this, subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Each reflection is a door to a more conscious space, one full of purpose, and I would love for us to continue walking this path together. Always remember that pain doesn't define who you are, but how you choose to face it can make all the difference. Every day that you choose to seek learning instead of lamenting, purpose instead of resistance, you are taking control of your story. And no matter how many storms you faced, there is still time to discover the sun waiting for you on the other side.